Welcome to the IREL podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next pre-construction deal, only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots and deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Questions One episode of the IREL podcast. I'm your host, Taylor White. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/Q1 for complete show notes. We have a solo episode today with yours truly, and I want to address 5 great questions I have received from listeners of this podcast so far. Let's jump into it. Question 1 comes from Brandon. I have listened to a few episodes thus far, and while the content is really great, sometimes the call quality itself isn't. Can this be improved? Well, first off, thank you, Brandon, in regards to the great content, as I would have to agree these insiders are really sharing amazing stories and on-the-ground insights. In regards to the call quality, I would also agree it can be improved on just about every episode we do with guests, and my team and I are constantly trying to find new ways to get a better sound. But the reality is internet connections and speeds just aren't nearly as good in places outside the United States in general, as we record using Skype, a call recorder, and a good headset and or mic. Where my base is currently, I have some of the fastest internet you can get with 50 megabytes per second download speeds. By comparisons of places I have lived recently, the fastest internet speeds I ever received in Panama City, Panama, living there for years, was 5 megabytes per second. It was less than 5 living in Lima, Peru, less than 1 in Fortaleza, Brazil, and Cuenca, Ecuador, and then a paltry 0.2 living in Las Terrenas, Dominican Republic. Again, those were for me when I was living there. On top of that, it's not always easy nor cost effective to buy equipment outside the U.S. for a lot of people depending on where they live. I can promise you that when I was in Cusco, Peru for several months in 2013, you couldn't hop onto Amazon.com, buy a top quality headset for $30, and then have it overnighted to your doorstep. I know that sounds contrary to what you might have heard about living outside the U.S. in terms of service and then what they cost, but I can assure you it's very much true as I've been doing it for years. Question 2 comes from AR. How can I contact the guests you have on the podcast? Well, each guest is free and encouraged to give out all of their preferred means of contact on each show. So if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other device, you can listen and jot it down. In addition, each guest has their own show notes page on our site, and their complete contact details are there if you want to follow up with them. We also do a word-for-word transcription of the show for those who like to read and place it via PDF on their show notes page on our site, and their complete contact details are included. So either listening and jot it down, head to their show notes page on our site and grab it there, or download it and take it PDF to read at your convenience. Question 3 comes from Rachel. If you had $100,000 to use and buy something overseas, where would you go? Well, I get this type of question a lot, where people want to know the secret place they might not yet have heard about, where it's cheap living and you can make tons and tons and tons of money buying and selling real estate. My answer to this would be, I have no idea. If you wanted to live in a cooler climate someplace in Latin America, it certainly wouldn't be Granada, Nicaragua, as it's extremely hot and humid. If you wanted to live within 3 hours of Florida, it certainly wouldn't be Boracay in the Philippines, as it's something around a 13-hour flight. If you wanted a great place to easily buy and sell real estate, as your niche is flipping, I certainly wouldn't pick any place in Brazil, as it's next to impossible to get a local bank account if you're a non-Brazilian, and wiring money to and from the country is a complete crapshoot. What I would do is this. Write down a list of what's important to me. Is it beaches? Is it nightlife? Is it purely for real estate investment? Do I want to live close to friends and family or really far? Then personally speak with as many people living there as possible to get a real sense of what day-to-day living is like. You really want to know from someone living there how much things cost, what the weather is like, what types of properties exist, can you get fast internet, is there good infrastructure, etc. Then go and find out. There is no substitution for actually spending the time, money, fun, and hassle of being someplace new. You can watch as many shows on TV as you want, listen to as many podcasts as you want, email back and forth until your fingers are numb, but nothing takes the place for actually being there. Question 4 comes from Thiel. Do the real estate agents you have on the show post real estate on your site? Well, I have a self-list real estate site where owners, agents, and developers from all over the world can post their real estate for sale, rent, and exchange. I certainly encourage everyone who's a guest on the show to list their properties with us so then listeners can see what they have to offer without ever leaving our site. For examples thus far, I know Mike Vitovich from Coronado, Panama, Mike Sager from Playas, Ecuador, Paul Juan from Cartagena, Colombia, and Kelly McFarland from Didim, Turkey do. However, to be perfectly clear, they don't have to be on the show, and the site is completely open to anyone to look at property listings or post property listings from anywhere in the world. And our final question comes from Miguel. In future podcasts, are you going to have on guests who offer great deals on the show itself? What I believe Miguel is referring to is having shows that are dedicated to great property deals in select locations. Yes, that is in the works now. Depending on which episodes listeners like best, we'll then determine having that insider back on the show, where we do a quick-hitting 10 to 15-minute show where the insider highlights a few deals they believe you should hear about. So if listeners want to hear more about specific deals in Cartagena, Colombia from Paul Juan, I will have back on the show Paul Juan, who has amazing deals to offer. If Sam Miller comes across some great bargains in Bogota and listeners have an appetite for it, we will have Sam back on the show with a few of the great deals he believes you need to know about. When Kelly McFarland in Didim, Turkey has an owner that needs to sell this month for personal reasons at a great price, I want my listeners to get first crack at it and hear what she has to say. Well, that's it for today. If you have any questions for me, head on over to irelpodcast.com/Q1 and ask away.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up IRELpodcast.com for more. That's IRELpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.